counselor for the QEII Health Sciences Centre. Check?
Check.
Okay, great. So that's the official, and this is to say thank you for coming and being the first.
Thank you. Thank you. Lovely. Good evening. How beautiful to see you. Thank you for asking me to be here.
And you've never been in this center, but you've been in our other ones.
Yes.
I mean, in Halifax, our smaller versions of this center, so he's an old timer. So we're all going to face, it's inevitable that we will all at some point, what we say here, leave our bodies. Being a soul that has a body, that's the BK vernacular for dying. Leave the body. It's inevitable, we're all going to do it. And my wish for this evening in inviting you here was that we could learn what you have learned spiritually about this process, so that we will be better equipped for our own departure, but that we could also be wise and skillful, loving companions for others. And maybe we can learn something about living. So, fair?
I'm on the same track, learning the same material, being taught by all my patients.
And your own journey. So if you would start, I only have 3 questions for you. Actually, I only have 2. What happens when we die, spiritually and physically, is the first one. And the second one is, what can we learn from that to help us now? But before we go there, can you just tell us a little bit about your journey and how it is that you happen to be so experienced in this matter?
So it started by being incarnated into this world, as it does for all of us. And thus I embarked upon the adventure of forgetting and then remembering. And along the bumpy path, you grow and mature and make attachments to objects and people and places and experiences, all to build your identity, right? And that identity gets challenged through crisis. And I had my first big one at, you get various ones, right? But I had cancer when I was 17. And I was diagnosed with a nasty little tumor called a pheochromocytoma that functions like a bomb, a time bomb in your body. And instead of cancer growing and consuming you from the inside, this tumor makes a Molotov cocktail of chemicals, and when your adrenal gland turns on, it causes the tumor to explode. You die in about 30 seconds. So diagnosing them usually is done in the autopsy. And I sailed through that first round because the tumor was actually in my bladder, so the metabolites were flushed out. And I didn't have the normal reactions. If you have massive amounts of dopamine and norepinephrine, you're going to have anxiety attacks and racing heart and sweating and palpitations, and I didn't experience those until the second tumor. I was 27, and I was on internship in Coquitlam, BC, and had this tumor inside me and didn't realize what it was doing, just found myself getting incredibly anxious and heart racing and then collapsing and fainting and cramps and pains. So it was such a relief when it was diagnosed, because I realized I'm not a nervous wreck. It isn't me. Because I would be a student minister getting up into the pulpit to preach, and public speaking is one of the most anxiety-provoking things you can do.
Except for tonight.
Oh, we're fine. We're fine. There's something in the tea. It was quite an experience, and one of the times when I collapsed, I had a mystical experience. I had a near-death experience, which is surprisingly much more common than you may realize. It could be as high as 1 in 5 people who have a brush with death will have a mystical experience. And that transformed me by, I think, recoding me and planting within me that raw awareness of being naked to love and absorbed into such beauty. So when you come back from here to hear from that, you don't know what to do. You're homesick for what you saw. You're perplexed and thinking it must have been imagination. You don't know that anybody else has gone through this. So you shove it away. And you get on with the reality you're embedded in. And so I did, and then ended up in a church and at a family and did all that. But all the while, within my heart, was a home that I was resisting. And then cancer came again, and by this time I had a child, and he learned to walk in the hospital corridors. And it was another experience infused with mystical moments that make you go, huh? And feel, wow, and keep it soft and deep. And then it happened again, another round with cancer. If you get cancer to learn some sort of lesson, I must be the most thick-headed student on the planet. And but all these rounds with cancer were refining me and shaping me in ways I could not comprehend. And then I began working in the hospital, leaving the parish. I gave that a good go, but I knew it wasn't true, my true place. And suddenly, in the corridors of a cancer floor and palliative care and in the intensive care unit, I felt strangely at home and so comfortable and excited. And now, 20 years there, accompanying hundreds upon hundreds as they die. They die, but they're transformed. To witness people on the edge of immortality, to walk with them to the precipice, and I tremble just realizing it's beautiful. Oh, it's beautiful. Heartbreaking. Terrifying wonder. And it's all going to be okay. My patients have been teaching me a new vocabulary of suffering and love, of what that does to us and how suffering and mortality shape us and prepare us for a transformation beyond our comprehension. And the great joy is you don't need to die in order to experience it.
Tell me the quote. Who was the Buddhist, the woman? What was the quote?
Oh, Pema Chodron.
Was it her who said that?
No.
The one about...
Don't waste a crisis?
No, it was about the only other thing she knows that is as effective as death.
Oh, yes.
Who was that? Sharon Langley.
She was a hospice worker.
Yes.
Her name is right there. She I better remember it by the end of this. She lays out beautifully how suffering and dying are so profoundly effective at deconstructing our ego identity in preparation for our spiritual identity. And so when that happens, of course, it's going to trigger the ego defense mechanisms for self-preservation. And we are going to thrash and complain and get ornery, and we're going to resist, and we're going to deflect and distract, and we're going to do anything we can not to do that homework. But you're only cramming for the exam if you postpone it too long. Right? And so the deconstruction of ego identity, she points out, happens in the reverse order that it was formed.
Yeah.
So we come into this world, and we have no differentiation of ourself to the environment. Everything is one. And we are a blank open slate, and I believe that is not a naive state, that is a state of fullness and innocence. And then, as we age in our first year, there's a contraction of consciousness. We realize that we are in an environment, right? That's the first contraction. So we have labeled the place there this and that. And then we realize that there are animate and inanimate objects in the environment. People, animals, pets moving around. But my teddy bear doesn't interact with me like that. So second contraction of consciousness and separation of one from another. Then a third one happens, and this is the realization that I have a body and I am a mind. So this is all within the first weeks or months. It's very quick. And I realize, and then I look in the mirror and you'll have recognition, realize that I am in here, I have this. And I am this, but I seem to be behind this part, looking at all this. So that's the third contraction. The fourth contraction is the greatest and most difficult and provides all the homework for us. The formation of material in the subconscious self. Messages and information which are congruent with our self-identity, we'll incorporate those as a structure of our ego. But those which we're not sure what to do with, or they're too vast and beautiful, or too harmful, we suppress those and we build a room called the subconscious, and we just put material in there all through our life. And it builds and builds, and it's a big room. And then, when suffering comes along, so let's say it's going to challenge ego identity. So I lose my teddy bear, my first toy, and I lament that. I've lost something central to my identity. Then, maybe I get a new sister. That confronts my ego identity. Then we move to a new home, or a new school, or my parents get divorced, and I lose my first girlfriend. And then my second, and then my third. All of this challenges us to reshape who and what we are in the world. We move to a new job, new city, new relationship, right? All of it shaping us. Become a parent, grow old, look into the mirror. Then in the second half of life, or the last third of life, or the last quarter, we realize that we are, in the last half, we are approaching that oblivion or transformation, that everything is impermanent, that people are getting sick all around me. Cancer seems to be everywhere now. And people are dying, and my parents are dying. And this challenges who and what we are. So we resist it. We buy a sports car. Or a nice suit, right? Pair of shoes, little retail therapy, get some new friends, right? We try to maintain that identity. But sometimes the suffering then becomes inevitable. Diagnosis of cancer. And our ego identity is rapidly deconstructed as we are rendered bedbound. Someone else has to clean us up. We cannot feed ourselves. We are dependent upon those loved ones. And because we love them, our instinct is to protect them from the suffering and the awareness of death, which we have been meditating upon since diagnosis. But that's a secret inner world. We dare not speak of it lest it give power to the words and give the impression to our family that we're losing hope and giving up. But we're not. We're negotiating with mortality. We're finding a new vocabulary. And we're longing for one thing besides being comfortable. To love and be loved. Because when we're deeply loved, we feel safe. And when we love deeply, we feel clear. Even we come back to ourselves. Sing, Kathleen Downey, sing. That's her name.
Yeah, and she said the only other thing that is as effective as death and suffering is meditation.
Yes, in meditation.
Do you think, really?
Yes.
That's as effective as death and dying?
It is, I think...
I mean, I should be promoting that, really. Yeah. I do believe this, but it's not as rapid.
It's not as rapid,
no.
Right? But it is effective. Meditation is the singular act where you can participate with intention in the deconstruction of your consciousness.
So one is by choice, and the other is foisted upon you.
Exactly.
So which one would you rather do?
So meditate because you're practicing, you're
Yeah.
rehearsing. Right? Now let's recognize,
Yeah.
in meditation, you are going to run into the most ornery, wise, crafty, difficult opponent of your life, who knows you better than you know yourself. This person's going to take you down before you even know it, right? This ego identity, the monkey mind, it's hilarious, it's relentless, and it will not stop. There is no end point, because as soon as you up your game,
Slippery.
it's going to up its game.
Yeah.
And just as soon as you've got it,
Yeah.
pull the rug out for you.
So we construct the identity. What you depicted, all of life is
Yes.
constructing this identity,
That's
right?
right, yeah.
Which, different than soul, it's identity.
Yes.
But then, so we deconstruct in the death process. Tell me what happens spiritually during that dying process.
Okay, so
And you can add physical too, but
sure. So in the identity experiment, which we are all participating in, and this is God's identity experiment, and each of us are unique expressions of that. So as one suffers and dies, the identity, ego identity is deconstructed. So that first expansion is the awakening of that material in the subconscious. It's going to come bubbling up. All your homework is going to be accelerated as you move into death. The unfinished love stories of your lives, the broken conversations, the rubble of relationships that is in the wake of pretty much all of our journeys. Both the relationship you have to yourself and to others and the world, all of that homework is asking not to be fixed, but asking to be integrated, to be accepted as it is. And without judgment or the critical voice, the critical voice, for it to be loved, for it to be forgiven, for it to be embraced. All those broken bits, all the scripts. And they are going to be triggered most powerfully in our family, because that's the primary laboratory of love. No one's going to push your buttons like your family. And we're not even going to be aware when those buttons are pushed. So a great thing to do is listen for the somatic wisdom. It's going to register in the body. Grumbling in the stomach, twisting in the gut, neck pain, migraine, dry mouth, you're starting to sweat, your heart's starting to race, your breathing is shallow. Okay, this is your body saying, here's some homework to work on. So as we listen to that, we don't need to understand what the homework is. Surprisingly, as in meditation, you just stay with it. Scan the body. Oh, I feel it here, or I feel it here. I'm going to breathe into it and stay with it. I'm not going to abandon any part of myself. I'm not going to suppress this. So I could be sitting with a patient, and they know that they're dying, and the main homework is not to figure out what they believe. Because, frankly, even if we have a rock-solid, great belief system, it's going to fall far short of the mystery that's out there. Because the poverty of our words simply cannot contain or reflect it accurately. So let's not focus so much on what we believe, the content of our belief. Let's focus on the quality of our love, because God is love. And I believe those are synonyms, which means love is not what we imagine it to be. Love is the highest state of consciousness. Completely integrated, completely transparent, authentic, connected, intensely creative. So to love the broken parts, right, the fragile, fractured aspects, to just sit with it and name it for the truth it is.
And this is part of the whole journey. I mean, this is, you named it as the first place we start, is all the subconscious from the basement, or, you know, it comes out, and that my homework reveals itself to me very quickly.
Yes.
When I face a diagnosis or when I know that death is imminent. Is that just a continuous journey? Are there other aspects that come as a soul transitions?
Yes, the second expansion is now that sense of I'm in my body. Well, now my mind and my body are reunited, unfortunately, through pain. That is the most common method, or medium. Pain has a excruciating accuracy in fusing you with your body. And yes. And it is critical for the healthcare team to make sure your journey on that aspect is as smooth as possible.
What's so accurate about it, David? Why did you say accurate?
Pain instantly reunites you with your body because your entire awareness becomes focused in that one area and it swallows you. The pain can be excruciating. And so now there's no differentiation. I'm not in my body, right? There's this oneness. We're looking at how to reunite to the totality and unity of all things. So first is reuniting with my parts of my personality and my life story that I'm suppressing now to my body. But it can also happen through ecstasy. We have experienced that, hopefully we have experienced that. The union through ecstasy, one body with another, one person with another, and you with your own body, right? This is also a beautiful moment of transformation on the opposite side of the spectrum. Then there's the third expansion. Moments, this is very close to death, when you feel complete connection to, there's no differentiation between animate and inanimate. Everything is beautiful. Everything is beautiful. I forgot who said, until we love everything unconditionally, we love anything imperfectly. And that love, again, is the highest state of consciousness, unity, connection, wonder, transparency, authenticity, vitality, creativity. Blah. And it's quiet and peaceful, and you ponder it and you go, oh. You can experience that in meditation. And then the final expansion, back to everything, is where you are one, you feel one with everything. You no longer have a body and a mind. You are all that. And this happens before, and I believe for many, as they die. So, ego is not something negative or undesired. It is part of the identity experiment.
Ego is part of the identity experiment. It's nice.
Yeah.
A little friendlier that way.
I find one of the best ways to do this work is with a good sense of humor.
Yes. Yes, you are blessed with that. It's helpful.
Oh yeah, I'm hilarious. You know, even though I had, I noticed even though I had a near-death experience through which I was awakened to love, it doesn't make you enlightened or upgrade you outwardly. You bumble along even more foolishly than before. Teachings that any movement towards the divine is simply a response to the divine's movement towards us, and is in itself empowered by the divine.
That's beautiful. Is that a Lutheran premise? Say
Yeah.
that again. Any movement toward the divine.
I have no idea what I said.
That is beautiful. Any movement toward the divine is a direct response
to the
divine's
divine's movement
towards
towards
me.
us.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. So your belief system, it is a vehicle through which you travel in love. And it's important to keep your vehicle in shape. So if your belief system doesn't have, if it's filled with fallacies or misdirection or anything like that, it's not going to be in good shape to carry you in this spiritual journey. We all need a vehicle. Now, I recognize that my vehicle on the road is Lutheran, but there are Hindu vehicles on the road. I can't just jump into that vehicle. I don't know how to drive it. It's got a different handbook, right? So the bottom line for any healthy spiritual tradition is not, is it the right way to God? No. Is it helpful and accurate and the best way in which you can express and evolve into love? Yes. In the Christian faith, I look at, okay, if God is love and Jesus is God, then Jesus is love. That means I can take the name Jesus out of the Bible and put the word love in, and it's going to work really well. I am the way and truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Now that's been used for exclusive claims about Jesus. Okay, love is the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to love except through love. There's a story of a great teacher who came running up to Jesus on the road and said, "Rabbi, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" And Jesus replied, "Well, you're a teacher of the law. What does it say?" "Ah, okay," says the lawyer or the teacher. He says, "Love God with your whole heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself." And Jesus replies, "Bob's your uncle." That's how you do it. He doesn't say, you must become this or that, or believe in me. Even when he said to people, believe in me, it's poorly translated. It means believe into me. Right? In the Garden of Gethsemane, he's about to be arrested and executed, and he prays, "Father, may they be one with us just as I am one with you. You and me and you, us and them." One, unity.
The melting away of these contractions as you're describing it.
But nobody fights like family. So, the human species, on all our religions, we scrap over who's got the copyright. It's silly.
Or the executor.
Who's the executor?
So practically so I'm learning a lot about the spiritual part of this, which is what I was really interested in, so that's great. But can we take that again and just follow through on the meditation thing?
Yes.
But first, in the actual dying, so practically helpful for one who is an accompaniment, an accompanier, a companion, tips.
So, if you're with someone who's dying, try not to speak unless you can improve upon silence.
That's great.
Yeah, but what am I going to say now?
I mean, everyone's different, obviously,
Yeah.
and they need different things, but some general principles that help that process.
So the quality of presence you have with yourself will determine the quality of your encounter with that person. So be aware of how you're present. Don't try to be calm or good or pull yourself together and quiet those tears and just don't do that, because the goal here is to be authentic. If you're a wreck, be a wreck. Breathe into it, stay with it, because grief is the price you pay for love. And your tears anoint your beloved. Your trembling words are a gift of vulnerability to them. So sit down, lean in, touch, weep. And if the person who is ill and dying gets uncomfortable and just says, "Look, I'm going to be I'm going to be fine," you can tell them the truth. You're dying. I love you. This is hard. I'm so glad to be here. establishing the common ground of vulnerability, demonstrating that it's safe to say the words death, dying, enables you to then say the words thank you, I love you. Because thank you, I love you, I forgive, and goodbye are the four things that need to be said.
Thank you, I love you, I forgive you, goodbye.
And you need to say that to yourself. Yeah. It's the hardest thing in the world, dying. We all are wired with the wisdom to do it. We don't trust ourselves. We try to preserve the ego and the safety. We try to protect our loved ones from this. The greatest concern upon the dying's heart is not their own transformation in oblivion or whatever, but the burden of care upon their loved ones. I was speaking with a woman today sitting at her side. She's terrified of death. And she said, I don't know how to talk to my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren. So I won't see them grow. And what do I do? She wanted the love story to continue. And it was beautiful to say to her, it's okay, they will. Your relationships are the only clothing you wear to heaven. So let's get them pressed and nice, right? And you look fabulous, right? She wondered how to talk with them. And I said, try to say the truth. And she was scared about what was on the other side. Because as far as we can remember, we don't think we've done this before. Right? And I don't know if we have. Reincarnation is an option. I think it's more complicated than my little brain can realize. So it was lovely to talk with her about near-death experiences and latest models of consciousness and the universality of that journey through all periods of history and all cultures. People have been having peeks at the other side for a long time.
And it was all love.
It's all love. It's all love. It's all transcendent. Big, wonderful. There are no words. And it's complicated.
The journey there.
Yes, is as unique as each person.
Yeah.
And the mystical experiences are as unique as each person. The foundation of them is the same. You disconnect from your body, you go to another place or way of being, you encounter other entities, you encounter your ancestors. Right? So your parents or grandparents will be front of the welcoming committee. You encounter other entities which are not human. That's a rather exciting thing. Right? That there's a spectrum of consciousness and there are celestial entities beyond our comprehension, even I believe on the other side. I think even there we continue to grow and evolve into love, into levels that we cannot perceive even without this type of body. Maybe we...
So say we only get to die once.
Okay.
At least that's what we
Let's keep it simple.
Let's just say, okay, but we could, if we were really good at it, then we wouldn't approach it with so much fear. So let's say whether we've done it many times and we forgot, or we only do it once.
Yeah.
But we really only remember doing it once, so it doesn't matter. So you have this capacity, because you've witnessed it so many times, to be very light about it, but very honest, very straight, incredibly compassionate, and deeply accepting. How does one arrive at that with oneself? Because it's really only one go we get. You've had hundreds witnessing
Yeah.
and being with.
Everybody will bring their wisdom in their way. And I can only do it my way. I have no idea how to do it.
You haven't done it yet.
No, accompanying those who are dying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But being in the
But being in that
departure role.
role,
It's beautiful. The light, like the tone, the awareness, the understanding that creates a certain attitude in you.
mhm.
It's just right. Like, yeah. Can you be there for all of us, please? Like, do we put in our requests now? No, but I mean, it's beautiful, and it comes from all those experiences. And wouldn't it be nice to be there myself? To be there without having to have 100 deaths.
So that's partly why I wrote the book, to try and impart what I've learned from my patients. I still feel very much like a beginning student in all of this. I'm still inconsistent in my love and bumbling along through my days. But the beauty is bigger than it's ever been. I think the essential thing is to be awake to your life, to be embedded in the moment that you have. Right now, this is the sacred moment. Meditation does that.
It does. And it softens the edges, and it opens a vulnerability that I didn't know before meditating. So that's good.
It's very good. It's very good. Softness, lightness of being, while also having depth of being. Giving yourself to that moment and disappearing into the beauty or the ambiguity of it without desiring it to be any particular thing.
A friend of mine with chronic illness said to me once, "Oh, you have the arrogance of the healthy." And I had to think about that a while, because I realized you're right. As long as my body functions, I have a certain arrogance that, I can handle this. I can take, there's something about when the body doesn't function, how you are rendered vulnerable.
Yes.
And I've never experienced that level of vulnerability without something happening to the body.
I recall the countless times I've collapsed because of my cancer. And to have no control over bowels or breath, to fall limp to the ground as if your skeleton has dissolved, to not be able to move any more than your eyes, right? It's such a contrast to this self-determination, right? To this,
Have body will travel.
yeah, yeah. Ironically, it's only when you lose the body that you really take the trip. Yeah, it is really hard, right? To be deconstructed, to be broken, to move into suffering, to experience pain. It is astonishingly hard. Thank goodness you and I live at this age in civilization.
Where there's pain medication.
Pain medication, right? That's fascinating. Medicine does not understand exactly what pain is. The same endorphins are involved in intense pleasure. It is our relationship to the experience that can shift it. So again, the quality of your presence with yourself will determine your experience.
Have you seen people, so, it's a euphemism, something we say in the meditation world, that pain is mandatory, suffering is optional. Have you seen stories, death experiences, where pain did not result in suffering? because I think many people are afraid of the death experience because of
Yes.
the pain involved,
Yes.
which we immediately assume will mean suffering.
Right. The number 2 concern for the dying is the suffering they anticipate will happen as they die.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, the rest of you, would that be the one on your list, the
Right.
suffering? Yeah, pain.
And let's not be naive about it. That suffering can be stubborn and very difficult to control. But I have seen people, and I do not have a pattern of who can do this, what personality types, but I have seen people work with their pain in such a way as to elevate their consciousness. Now, in the Buddhist tradition, it's beautifully expressed through Tonglen, and I do that meditation with patients, in which they focus their awareness deeply into their pain, feeling the nuances of it, not shrinking back from it in any way, and then breathing in more of that pain from the other patients and adding it to their own pain, but then breathing out and sending out compassion to those patients. I am with you. I understand. When we are compassionate, we realize that we still have self-determination, and that we don't need to be controlled by everything we feel, and we don't need to believe everything we think. Thank goodness. I had a man, his story is in the book. He was a sixth level black belt. He ran a school for karate. And his body, when he entered the hospital, was that of a god. And he shriveled into the skeletal form, we imagine, with cancer. And as he lay in the bed, he looked up in helplessness. What can I do? I'm in pain. And I said, well, you've been training for this. So let's use meditation. And he was remarkable. Now, he was a 6th level black belt.
A strong mind.
Strong mind. He came in well fortified. And he was able to use his suffering for the benefit of others, which is, in the Christian tradition, called redemptive suffering, where you do what Jesus did. Take in the pain of the world, send back love and forgiveness and restoration. In the Buddhist tradition, it's Tonglen. In the Jewish tradition, it's Tikkun Olam, right? Repairing the shards of the divine. Now, there was another person. She didn't want to say the word cancer. She was in the hospital for months and months and months. You would think that she was suppressing and denying everything, but no, she was doing it her way. And she did it through knitting. Her knitting was her meditation, and she knit love into every stitch. And she made shawls for the other patients. Right? To use your suffering for the benefit of others transforms your suffering into something noble, even as you are swallowed by it. It is still critical to have good pain reporting, good medication, good nursing care, and loving family who can take time to take care of themselves. Yeah, we are eroded by all of this.
And our focus very often is so much on the body in that process, and the minutiae and the medicality of all of that we're not often paying attention to. And what does the soul need to do just to heal?
Yes.
To finish, to close, to package, to forgive, to make peace with, to settle.
Spiritual healing, right, is of the heart and the soul. It's not of the body.
No.
And is the most foundational aspect of divine restoration. Forgiveness is a huge part of this. To forgive is an act of remembering the divinity of yourself and the divinity of others. Even when they are difficult, belligerent, abusive, to see their behavior and be able to say, I see the divine in you, even if you do not see it in yourself. And I will honor that. And I will honor the divine in me. Sometimes that will require protecting myself from you. and other times it will be speaking the truth of your behavior, having no respect for your behavior, but having infinite respect for you. Right? That's a fierce love. And as you're dying, what do you got to lose? Call people out? They're not going to like it. But to do it in love, as an act of repairing, of naming the truth that may have been suppressed for years. In my book, I mentioned 3 cases where sexual trauma and abuse has staggeringly not destroyed the individual, but lurks as part of their identity. And the critical need for forgiveness and restoration, which doesn't require speaking to that abuser, to the person who's injured you, but is a new relationship with yourself and your pain. And that was there because I hate how frequently we run across that. And then going through cancer treatment is going to trigger previous trauma. So if you have a woman going through cervical cancer and going for brachytherapy, oh my goodness. Screening for this should be automatic, and compassion for it should be intense. Yes.
Do you remember when Christine was diagnosed? I remember that's when I first met you, was back in that period. And I remember her making the choice, okay, my body's going fast. It turns out it didn't. She's still with us, but looked like it was a death.
Why am I not surprised?
Yeah, because she was fierce, right? But remember, she made the choice, and you might have been part of that, I don't recall, but she made the choice, look, whatever happens with my body, and I'll do the drug trials, and I'll do all that stuff, but whatever happens, I'm going to focus on soul healing.
Right.
And she dedicated the next 10 years to soul healing. What do you make of that?
The qualities of remarkable survivors are surprisingly consistent. They are people who are animated by a deep sense of purpose in their life. That doesn't mean I know my career path, but they know who they are in this world. And they have compassion and a good sense of humor. They are frequently stubborn. They have vibrant relationships that are significant to them, so they're not isolated, right? And they take ownership and full participation in their health, right? Which doesn't mean they go on a totally vegan diet, but they are really aware and intentionally, mindfully listening to their body and doing what is wise, right? Though I gotta say, I do actually believe vegan is a very good idea.
Hey, you're talking to the, you're
Talking to the
preaching
choir?
to the choir,
Right.
yeah.
Well, I'm the student here. I've been enjoying a vegan diet for a few months now. Not hardcore, but certainly radically different than what I used to eat.
So the truffle we'll give you when you leave, you'll be able to eat?
With delight.
Excellent.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, so I'm getting a picture of the dying experience, and I'm seeing the connection to spiritual in terms of my own effort making now for myself, so that when I face my final moments, hopefully they'll be more graceful than before I did all that spiritual work.
Though there is a Zen story of a master who was dying, and his students gathered around him, and he looked upon them from his bed and asked, "Have you come to see how a teacher dies?" And he said, "Yes, master." And he kicked his feet and said, "I don't want to go, I don't want to go."
That's great.
Right?
Could be.
Let us not presume our arrival.
We never know.
No, we never
We
know.
never know how it will be.
So whatever comes up, however we are, let's have a sense of humor about it. And open to the love and blessing of others. And accurately report our pain and discomfort. And compassionately release our role in family, in job, in community, our ability to drive the car, our ability to go to the bathroom. Let's just say, this is hard. I don't like seeing you guys do this, but I'm so grateful that you are here to do this.
Mhm.
Breathe into it, love deeply, and try to leave clean underwear.
Although we might not have any control.
You might not
over
have any
that
choice over
either,
that.
Really. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I have no idea how I will be when I die.
Wow, coming from you who's seen 100 case studies, really?
I have no idea. I'm not afraid of death in any way. Dying is another issue, right? And I hope that that, like most people, goes fairly swiftly, and it'd be nice to be in my sleep so I can fall asleep here and wake up there. But death itself, I continue to be homesick for what I saw.
Mm-hmm.
If I may touch upon another aspect of the spiritual side of this, which frequently comes up and is important to address. I often hear people say, God has a reason for this, or there's a reason for everything. I really don't like it. And I recognize now that this is the best our vocabulary has to try to put handles on the chaos. There is no disaster that can befall us as a species or as individuals which can thwart the agenda of love. We're just not that powerful. Let's remember that we're expressions of that. And all suffering can be used for the evolution of our species into love. But we are invited to step up in compassion, responding to it, and that will accelerate our progression. And as we hold our compassion back, we only deny ourselves our spiritual growth, as well as the other. Which is why I think Teilhard de Chardin said, as long as one person suffers, Christ remains crucified.
He said that. That's beautiful. We talked about this earlier, but your journey is refining you in such a way that you're ready to be the kind of instrument you are being called to be right now around the world, talking. I know the book was kind of the platform or the launch for that, but it seems only an expression of where you're at with yourself.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Very true. The book was profoundly therapeutic, came bursting out of me at 4 a.m. after a difficult case, and it just kept pouring out. And I'm intensely grateful for it, and it's gone off and has a life of its own. It's having all these conversations and relationships, and I realized that a good book has a soul, and that soul grows with everyone who reads it.
It's ever so simple, really. I think it's what David's describing as just coming back to yourself. And, if you went to the Shambhala Buddhist Center, you would get different instruction. We'd be more about breathing. But here, our method is really simply just to be aware that I am the thinking, sentient being, the spirit inside this body. And as a spirit, I have no form. Like, I don't have physicality. So I'm in the most subtle energy that is me, really. And it's so elusive and subtle, and yet it's so incredibly simple. And we spend the day walking around thinking I'm the body because I'm so kind of in it, that anything that happens to the body, I immediately suffer. And so just developing this practice and this awareness that I'm the one that makes the body move. I'm the one that's experiencing and expressing through the body, but I am the one who will ultimately leave this body. And it's funny, here in the Brahma Kumaris, there's a word, a term for it called dying alive, which I think is kind of weird, but it's common in many spiritual paths, that this dying alive is I used to have it backwards. I was thinking about being the living dead, and it's like, no, it's the other way around. You're supposed to die to all those things that cause you to limit your consciousness, right? Die to all that, and then you'll really be alive. So the process of dying is actually kind of what we do when we meditate. We pull our attention away from the body, from the feelings, the thoughts, and come right behind all of that to that silent space that's eternally there. We call that soul here. So that's our approach.
It's so subtle and slippery. To meditate is to be fully open to the noise, both internal and external. We tend to think that if I meditate, I'm calming the mind. Oh, no, you can't calm the mind. The more you try and calm it, the more it's going to jump around and say, boom. Right? So it's watching the mind, right, and realizing I am not these thoughts. I have these thoughts, but that's not who I am. I have this body, that's not who I am. I have these feelings, that's not who I am. I'm watching my experience. And as you step back and watch your experience, then the calmness is a side effect of that. Then you step into something other. And it is the most direct way to realize that you are a unique expression of the underlying consciousness from which reality emanates and is sustained in every moment. And you participate in it. Your consciousness is the only real estate you share with God. Invest wisely. Yeah. So it's a metastate of consciousness, of watching.
And I would lovely description. I would add to that who's the one watching, and that's the one we identify with. Who is the one watching all those thoughts and noticing all of them, and that would be the eternal me.
This is a wonderful way to interrupt reactivity, right? To notice how I feel when someone is angry, or when someone is right, when I'm uncomfortable, to notice my uncomfortableness. Be curious about it. Oh, what's that? Oh, stay with it. There's a clarity that comes. You still probably won't know what to do, but you'll be more deeply present. And then there are those moments which are transcendent, in which you disappear. It's beautiful.
Beautiful, precious, worth more than anything.
Yeah.
Any other questions that you have?
Have you been in the situation where the spirit is leaving the body in various ages? I mean, a lot of us are probably speaking about people that are at their later stages of life. People, special needs children, medically fragile children. Have you been in experiences of a younger body? Let's word it that way.
Could you hear at the back?
And do you have a different approach in how you are with a younger body rather than a more aged body?
So the question is, have I been with people of various ages, very young compared to old, as they've died? Yes, I have been with 99-year-olds, with 30-year-olds, and with 2-week-olds and hours old. Do I sense a difference? Only in myself. The death of a newborn was too much for me, and I was on call for the IWK Grace for 2 years, and every time the pager went off, it was an infant death, stillbirth. I can't do that work. It's too much. So my heart. Working with 14-year-old really stands out. That was amazing to soak in his wisdom. So transparent in how he died. It was a luminous experience to feel his spirit leave his body. I was doing therapeutic touch. I was doing an energy treatment on him while it happened. I could feel him. I could feel him say, "Thank you. I love you all." Oh. And I was with a woman in her 80s. As she left, I could feel the energy flowing out of the crown of her crown chakra. I felt that energy a few times. And as soon as I sense it, you know, part of you, the ego, wants to get in there and really experience it. Oh, this is so cool. No, you step out. You step out. You fall silent and you just open up, because this is sacred ground. Don't get in the way, just be part of it. Right? And let the family know, I can feel her going now. You know, come in with your love. Now I can do that with those hundreds, but if it's someone I know, it's completely different. And I will be a wreck.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Do you know, they say, you said earlier, grief is the price we pay for love, and I would, you know, in the spiritual journey, I would rename that as grief is the price we pay for attachment.
Can I use that?
Yeah, please. Well, I mean, that's been my
Yes.
experience.
Yes.
That, you know, when somebody we love, would you run up and give Dawn a little gift as she's leaving? There's a little gift as you leave. Thank you, Dawn. Yeah, no, it's the attachment that causes the suffering. The
Right.
love is lubrication.
Beautiful.
Yeah, isn't that true, though?
Oh, I love that.
But isn't that true?
Absolutely.
I mean, I think it's true, for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that ultimately in dying, what we're doing is letting go of all those attachments to this ego identity, to this
Yeah.
relationship, to this, the way I thought it would be, to this dream, to this. It's like, it's the
And
attachment.
when your loved one is doing that, holding on to what was,
Yeah.
let them do that. Because they'll do it in their time and in their way. And just for you to be aware of that, that's what it is,
Yeah,
helps you not react to it.
right. That's lovely. That's lovely. Yeah, go ahead.
Could you just repeat what it was you said?
That, you know, we say grief is the price you pay for love, and I would change that to grief is the price we pay for attachment. Like love is different than attachment. It's the love that David's been talking about that has been transcendent, that's
Yes.
been the lubricant, that's been the aid and assistant and the ultimate aim, and your homesickness is for that,
Yes.
not
Yes.
for attachment.
No. No, there was no attachment to anything because
Yeah.
I was one with everything.
Part of everything, yeah.
Yeah.
Carla, and then at the back. Go ahead, Carla.
I work in the healthcare field, and part of my question gets to be a little bit about how to work with the caregivers and the institution and the pace and I mean, I feel a real presence for sure, but there's a whole dialogue that maybe your book is going to initiate. But I guess my question is, what do you see in that?
In the clinical setting, I see profound compassion and expertise melded with technology and protocols. And the pace of it and scale of it result in us not being able to bring our full humanity to the bedside. And as a result, we do our best to mitigate suffering for death after death after death, but we have no way to process any of them between the cases. So compassion fatigue results not from exposure to suffering, but from the inability to take even 5 minutes to work with the residue which remains in you And so that accumulates as spiritual and emotional cholesterol. Okay. And eventually, you're going to get clogged up. And
Wow.
so to clear the cholesterol, let's remember cholesterol is made within the body and is created by what we take in. So the solution to it is the same as with physical cholesterol. Exercise, because the body is wise in processing suffering and distress. Eat clean, maintain healthy relationships, laugh.
And meditate. Lots
And-
gets processed.
Saving the best to last.
Yeah.
Right? And meditate.